Good morning or afternoon. Okay, so today is your last day before I come back tomorrow, so I hope I have great sub reports. You guys got this. So on Friday, you guys were doing the adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing integers task cards. But what you noticed about all of those is that they were all just computation problems. They weren't word problems, which we all know that's not always realistic. So now we're going to do some word problems. I know mine's not as easy to see, but you have the same thing in front of you, so hopefully we can do it. So it says a team gains 20 yards, then they lose 7 yards. So the first thing when I read it, I'm seeing those keywords and I'm going to underline them. So I'm going to underline gains 20 and lose 7. Because gains tells me what sign it is, and so does lose. So if I gain 20 yards, that's the same thing as positive 20. And then I lose 7 yards. So in my brain, I'm thinking, okay, I just want to subtract 7. But it needs to be an addition problem. So instead of subtracting 7, I'm like, oh, I can't subtract 7, but I can add negative 7. So I'm going to put in plus, so I have positive 20 plus negative 7. Now let's play party or war. Okay, so is this a party or a war? Well, it's a war because they have opposite signs. Who won the war? The positives, because there's more positive soldiers. So I'm going to go ahead and write positive down. And then I'm going to say, and how much did they win by? And they won by 13 soldiers. So the answer is positive 13, which makes sense because if you gain 20 yards and then lose 7, you're still 13 yards ahead of where you started. Okay, so now let's try and go ahead and do number 1 of the subtracting. So this time they want a subtraction problem. A team gained 5 yards on their first play of the game. Then they lost 6 yards. Find the total change. Okay, so I'm going through after I read it, and I'm underlining keywords that I think will be helpful. So I went ahead and underlined that we gained 5 yards, lost 6 yards. Oh, I'm sorry. Gained 5 yards, lost 6, and we're finding the total amount of change. Oh, my head is up in here. Okay, so we started off by gaining 5. So I think, well, gaining is a good thing, so that must be positive 5. And then it says that I lost 6 yards. Okay, so up here, when we lost 6, well, we lost 7, we just added negative 7. But here it wants a subtraction problem. So instead, let's just subtract 6. So now I have positive 5 minus 6. But oh no, 5's not big enough to subtract. So what I'm going to do, I can't do the double T method. So I'm actually just going to circle them and add. So I circled them and added. So 5 plus negative 6. Is that a party or a war? That's a war. They have different signs. Who won the war? The negatives won. And by how much? 1 soldier. So that means the total change in yards is negative 1 because they gained 5, then they lost 6. So now they're actually farther behind than where they started. Because it was like football, I kind of like to draw a picture also. And so I'm at 0, and then I go to 5. Okay, so I go 5 to the right, and then I'm subtracting 6. So then I'm going to go all the way back to 0 and 1 more. I could have drawn all my tallies too, but if I would have subtracted to the left, it would have brought me to negative 1. Okay, remember you can always draw out your positives and your negatives if that helps. So I like to call them counters, but redraw the positives and negatives and circle the 0 pairs. I think that's super helpful. Okay, let's switch down to multiplying integers. Suppose the temperature outside is dropping 3 degrees each hour. How much will the temperature change in 8 hours? Okay, so I'm looking for those keywords that tell me if it's a positive or a negative. Dropping 3 degrees in 8 hours. Okay, so this is what I underlined. So dropping 3 degrees, that's negative. When it goes down in temperature, that's negative. So I'm going to write -3. And that's how much for 1 hour. So if I wanted to on a number line, I could drop 3, go drop 3, 1 hour, drop 3, 2 hour, drop 3, 4 hour, drop 4. Well, I got lost, but you know, I could do that for 8 hours, okay? Or I could just multiply by 8, because if you know how much for 1, you can find out how for however many by multiplying, okay? So I could have, hold on one second, okay. I could have started at 0 and dropped 3 8 times to see where I landed. Or I could just multiply by 8. So then I think, okay, this is multiplying. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my triangle. So I have the positive up top and 2 negatives. So I'm multiplying a negative, so I'm going to cover the negative, and a positive, so I'm going to cover the positive, and I'm left with a negative. Oh, my face is up in it again. So my answer is negative. 3 times 8 is 24. So my answer is negative 24. So for all multiplying and dividing questions, you should be using that triangle. Okay, let's go to number 4. Lesson 4, dividing integers, number 1. During a 5-day work week, the stock market decreased by 65 points. So that's the total amount it did in the entire time. Determine the average daily change in the market. Okay, so I'm underlining it decreased by 65 points, 5 days, average daily. Okay, so those are the words that I thought, wow, those are really important. I should underline them. So I'm looking at it, and I decreased 65, and that's my total. So I decreased 65 points in 5 days. So I just went ahead and wrote it like a fraction. Okay, so I know a fraction is just like division. It means the exact same thing. So because it means the exact same thing, I'm going to be dividing negative 65 divided by 5 to find out how much it is for 1 day. Okay, because I know for 5, so I divide to find out how much for 1 day. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out the top, negative 65 divided by 5. I know the 5 is positive because the number of days can't ever be negative. I'm never negative in time, right? That doesn't make sense. Just like distance is never negative, time like that, that doesn't make sense. So a negative divided by a positive, I'm still going to use that triangle, and I'm going to cover up a negative and a positive, and I'm left with a negative. And then 65 divided by 5, I'm going to go to the side of my paper, and I'm going to divide, and I'm going to get 13. Okay, so let's see, does that make sense? So that means I dropped negative 13 points every day. That makes sense because I dropped a total of 65 points. Okay, let's go to the back. Now the back is bonus, so don't worry about the back until you do the whole front. And I know you got this. We're almost done, guys. Well, we're almost ready for you to do it without me. We're not almost done. At the beginning of the month, Julie had a balance of $90 in her account. During the month, she deposited the following checks, $25 and $40. She also wrote a check for $200. What is the account balance at the end of the month? You know what? This question sounds really similar to one of those that we had on our interim assessment. Okay, so the first thing I look and I say, I have a balance of $90. Okay, if I have a balance of $90, that means I do have $90 in my account. So that's positive 90, because that means that's how much money I have in my account right now. And then it says I deposited $25 and $40. So I'm looking through my integer notes. I'm looking 25 and 40 deposited. Deposit means to add. So I'm going to add in $25 and add in $40. So right now I have my balance plus the checks. But then it says that I'm writing a check for $200. When I write a check, I'm paying someone money, right? So I hope I have enough money in my account. If not, that's called a overdraft. Okay, so that means I'm going to subtract 200 at the very end because I wrote a check. So 90 plus 25 is 115. 115 plus 40 is 155. So right now I have $155 after I deposited those checks into my account, and I'm writing a check for $200. So do I have enough money in my bank account to buy something for $200? No, I don't. That means I'm going to owe the bank money. And so I know when I subtract, my answer is going to be negative because I didn't have enough money in my account. So now I need to think 155 minus 200. Well, the easiest way to think about it is just, well, how much will I owe the bank? Okay, I have 155, but I don't have 200, so that's $45. But if you can't do that in your head, another way to do that is to say, nope, I'm not doing the double T method, so I'm just going to circle them and then add them. And so now I'm doing party or war. So 155 plus negative 200. Well, who won the war? The negatives. That's because you don't have enough money in your account. And then by how much means you need to kill off some soldiers and you're left with 45 negatives. Okay, so I've done one problem in each section. So I've done 5 problems for you. So now go back and do the other ones. Remember, I underlined keywords. I figured out if that means it's a positive or a negative. I used my party or war strategy. I used my circle or double T if I'm subtracting. I used the triangle method if I'm multiplying or dividing. You guys got this. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.